On today's video, I'm going to be doubling the notes on this guitar by making it microtonal. If you don't know, a microtonal guitar basically has more frets than a normal guitar. Standard guitars use 12-tone equal temperament, 12 notes per octave. Microtonal guitars add extra frets to access microtones, which are notes that fall between the usual semitones. There are many ways to do a microtonal layout, but the one I'll be doing here is a quarter tone layout. That is 24 notes per octave, with each note a half semitone apart. To do this, I'll be adding a fret between each existing fret. So let's get into it. Alright, so let's just talk about the guitar I'll be using first. This guitar is a Samick DS410. It was built in the mid-90s, and I bought it for $60. I've always wanted to have a microtonal guitar, but I didn't want to actually buy a whole new guitar because I wasn't sure if I would like it. It's kind of a weird idea. So I'm looking forward to taking this opportunity to converting this very inexpensive guitar into something I've always wanted to have. So I guess the next thing we got to do is get these strings off of here and get this neck off of here. Now the next thing we're going to do is just pop the neck off of here. Okay, so now I'm just going to put this body in a safe place. Alright, so now it would be a good idea to make sure that the neck is actually straight. You can see at the first fret, the straight edge is touching. It's touching the fret. And then as we go along, the frets are no longer touching, until we get to the upper frets. Now this is, pretty far up the fretboard where they're actually touching again. So that means that we have a bow in the middle of our neck. So this is all right for playing. Actually, it's good for playing, but it is not good for when you're trying to level your frets. So I'm going to be adjusting the truss rod to get this straight, and then we'll take it from there. So I was literally just doing this on my last video, but in case you missed it, to adjust a truss rod, you will tighten it clockwise, righty-tighty, to straighten the neck, and you loosen it counterclockwise, lefty-loosey, to create a bow in the neck. So because we have a bow in this neck, what we want to do is tighten it. So on this particular guitar, like many guitars, you use an Allen key. And inside this hole, there is a little fastener that the Allen key goes into. So what I'm going to do is tighten this until the neck is straight, measured by my straight edge. That's about, I don't know, a quarter of a turn. Whoopsie doodle. Let's see how we're looking now. So as you just saw there, I did 2 little tiny turns on that truss rod. And now my neck is straight. So what I've got to do now is find the center point between each fret so that I can come in with a fret saw and cut it. So what I'm going to do is just measure. You can see where the fret tangs are on the side of the neck. So I'm going to take my calipers and measure the space from tang to tang. On this particular fret, I have a space of 1.360. I'm going to take my calculator, 1.360 divided by 2. That gives me a measurement of 0.68 of an inch. So take my caliper, adjust it to 0.68 of an inch, and then I'm going to mark that out. Then I'm going to take a straight edge and just join those 2 marks. So there you can see I've got a mark between those 2 frets. That is going to be where I will be cutting the new slot. So now I'm just going to do the same thing for all the rest of these frets. All right, so now I've got my pencil marks between each fret. And now what I'm going to do is cut these new fret slots. So here I have a fret saw. So this is a special saw for cutting fret slots. The thickness of the blade, the kerf, is the same thickness as the tang on a fret. And there's also this special, I guess, stopper, which allows you to set the depth of the cut. So I've set this up so the depth of the cut is just slightly deeper than the tang on this fret. So now I've got my fret saw set up. I've got my fretboard marked out. What I'm going to do is cut each one of these lines as accurately as possible. Now, this isn't going to be as perfect as if I did this on a CNC machine or in a factory with a fancy setup, but this will be more than accurate enough for the danger zone. Okay, so I've got all of my extra fret slots cut in here now. So you'll notice some of my fret markers popped out. Not a huge deal. I'm just going to glue them back in and yeah, we'll be good to go. Just going to use some super glue for this. This is just accelerator. It makes the glue set up really quickly. So now I've got my fret markers glued back in. I'm just going to run the saw through those slots again and make sure all the glue is cleared out so I got room for my frets. So now I've got all my fret markers glued back in. I'm just going to clean up the little bit of extra super glue off the fretboard with this razor blade. All right, so we got our fret slots cut. We got our fret markers repaired. So now we're ready to install these frets. What I've got here is a sandbag that is wrapped in plastic and covered with a blanket. This is going to support the neck as I hammer the frets into it. What I have here is a fret bender. As far as fret wire goes, I've got a pack here of StewMac medium guitar fret wire. So I've cut my fret roughly to the length of the first fret. Now I'm just going to run it through my fret wire bender here. Okay, so that's put a little bit of a bend on this fret. All right, now I'm just going to take this old hammer I got here. It's got like plastic ends on it, and just bash this fret in here. Then we'll just go on to the next fret. I think I'm going to put a bend on this big piece because it's kind of hard to put a bend on a little piece. That's a lot better. So now I've got all of my extra frets added. I'm just going to cut the ends off, these extra long ends, and then we'll file them down after that. So I'm just going to use my end cutters to do this. Okay, now that those are nicely trimmed, I'm just going to take an axe file and just go along the edge and make sure I get them nice and smooth. All right, so now I've got all my edges nicely filed and smooth with the edge of the fretboard. What I'm going to do now is take my file and just put a bevel on the edge of these new frets so that they're not all sharp and pokey. Okay, so now I've got a nice bevel on the edge of all my frets. So what I'm going to do now Just go around each end with this little file and just make sure that there's no jagged edges and round everything over so it's nice and smooth. So now I have all the ends of my frets nicely rounded over, or dressed, as they say. It's nice and smooth to the touch. The next thing we're going to do now is level these frets. What I'm going to do is just take a marker and color the surface of each fret. This marker sucks. All right, so there we go. We got the surface of every fret colored black. So what I'm going to do now is take my level. Now I have 220 grit sandpaper glued to this with rubber cement. This is perfectly flat. And what I'm going to do is rub it on my frets, and this black marker ink is going to show me anywhere I have a low spot. So I'm just going to keep going on it carefully, slowly, until all of my black ink is gone. I've also got to get this nut out of here. Oh no, when I was banging my nut out of there, took a piece of the fretboard with it. So that's pretty annoying, but it's not the end of the world. Alright, so I've sanded these frets all down so they're level with each other. Now the next thing I gotta do here is recrown them. I got my fret crowning file here. Now this is a medium file on one side and a large on the other, which is good because the frets I installed in this neck are medium and the existing factory ones are large. So I'm going to be making use of both sides of this file. If you want to see me do a little bit of an in-depth explanation on how this works, I'll put a link to another video in the description. So I've got all of my frets crowned now. They're nice and, well, crowned again. I guess the next thing I'm going to do now is just polish these all up. Okay, so I got my micro mesh here. If you've watched the channel before, you know what I'm going to do. If you haven't watched this channel, 2400 to 12,000 grit. It's going to beautifully polish this. So we'll start off with 2400 grit, 3200 grit, 3600 grit, 4000, 6000 grit, 8,000 grit, and of course 12,000 grit. So there we go. We've got our frets beautifully polished now. So now we can start worrying about our nut and how it broke a chunk of our fretboard out of here. So I guess the first thing I'm going to do is get this piece of rosewood off of the nut and glue it back on here. Then we'll get started making a new nut. Great. So what I've got here is just some thin super glue. I'm just going to super glue this back on here. It's probably way too much. Just soak some of that up. Okay. There we go, good as new. So I'm gonna make a new nut. So I've got this bag of these are just bone blanks. So just a piece of bone. I'm just gonna cut this down with the hacksaw just to get into the ballpark because this is way too big. So actually I have enough for 2 nuts. So that's great. So now I just got to get the thickness to be the same. So I just got a sanding block here. So I finally got the nut down to the point where it will fit into the slot on the fretboard. So now the next step I'm going to do is actually shape the top of it so that it matches the contour of the old nut. Okay, so I've got the rough shape of my nut made. The next thing I'm going to do is just transfer the string slots from the old one onto the new one. And to do that, I'm going to use nut files. So I have a selection of nut files here. Each one is a differing thickness corresponding to the string thicknesses. So yeah, I'm just going to choose the one I think is right for each nut slot and just go with it. All right, so for the low E, I'm going to start with a 50 thousandths. Then I'm going to jump down to a 42. Then I'm going to jump down to a 36. Then I'm going to jump down to a 26. Then the last two I'm going to do at 16 thousandths. Okay, so I've got my nut made. Now at this point, I'm going to try and clean up this heavily soiled fretboard. Normally I would put tape down before I did all this fretwork to protect the fretboard, but I thought I'd try something different and not do that this time. So I'm just going to try cleaning it with some of this F1 oil. Huh, seems to be working good. I think that did a nice job cleaning up that gunk. So now we're just going to put this neck back on the body, string it up, and then try this out. When I just turned it over, one of the posts out of one of my tuners, the low E tuner, fell out. Uh-oh. So we'll have to figure out if we can fix that. But let's get the neck on first. So I guess we should take a look at our tuner. Looks like I did this backwards. Good as new. Okay, I guess now we'll just put the strings on here. So I got my strings on here, and if you remember from the beginning of the video, I tightened this truss rod up. So now I'm going to loosen it again, back to where it was before. So that's going to be 2 little turns here. Now we'll just tune it up. We'll just do this the old-fashioned way. That's close enough for right now. Alright, that's it for this video. This honestly turned out pretty cool. I didn't know what to expect, so this has exceeded my expectations. Would I do this to one of my more prized guitars? Probably not. This is more of a novelty, at least for me. Maybe that will change over time. So if you found that interesting, I want to see what my future plans are for this guitar. I'll be honest, they're even crazier than this. Make sure to subscribe. And if you're still watching, do me a favor, leave me a like or a comment. It really helps out with the channel, and I appreciate it. Until next week, talk to you later.